Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and professional growth and opportunity across America. Welcome everyone. It's hard to believe that this week marks the one-year start of the Ameritocracy Podcast. In today's show, we're going to be reflecting on the insights that we've gained over the past 52 episodes, courtesy of our amazing guests that have shared their journey with us. What I'd like to do is we've been getting a lot of feedback over the last year through our website, and a lot of people are asking this question. What prompted me to embark on the journey into podcasting, and what was I hoping to achieve? First of all, the focus of the Ameritocracy Show was really creating a term that is combining America and meritocracy. And really what that means is just evaluating where effort and talent meet opportunity. We also take a look at the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. I want to make sure that we have conversations with guests from various industries and backgrounds about their origin stories, personal performance, and current events to provide balanced perspective on merit and the costs and benefits of opportunity. Our main goal is to really just make sure Ameritocracy is a weekly podcast that explores the conditions for personal and professional growth across the U.S. And we do that with three objectives. First, we want to make sure that we properly illuminate our guests. Anybody that's been on the show realizes we just really want to make sure that the show's prepared for them and that it's an effortless activity with them and that they are able to really get to the key that our listeners want, which is their story, and make sure that we're bringing that out and that it's something that's effortless. Second is I want to be able to create a comprehensive library of personal and professional mentoring services or resources that people can use for evaluating opportunities, recognizing merit, and striving for success. A real way of being able to almost have a Wikipedia of different experiences that you could go to and really, if you wanted to learn about radio, if you wanted to learn about art, if you wanted to learn about politics, breaking out of the corporate life and starting your own business, anything like that. And then third is really provide sidebar conversations. And this would be a companion to our podcast along with the regular Ameritocracy, which is really foster deep discussions on a wide range of various topics and current events. Examples of that is bringing back Barry Richards, who was on episode number 1, basically bringing the guests in through the interview so that the audience gets to know the guest, and then bringing them back for some key deeper discussions and, again, to just look through the different topics and current events to get their perspective. And really what I was trying to do there is to show how mentors potentially help me. And so these are sidebar discussions that I'm trying to have with our guests in public, on the video and within the podcast, to really kind of get an idea of letting my hair down, basically trying to relax and ask some questions and, really not too scripted either. So these go down different areas. Hopefully everybody likes it. And if you think there's areas we could do better, definitely send the feedback. So really that is the main mission and really what I've been trying to achieve with the Meritocracy. Next up, what I wanted to do on the show was to talk a little bit about this year in review. What a year it's been. 52 episodes. We've had tremendous guests, interviews, and some key takeaways. And, it's very hard when you're having a show and each week, preparing and getting your mind around the guest that's coming on and getting involved, and also just to be respectful to their story. So it's hard to pick ones out of the pack. But really what I try to do, and again, not picking any over another, is really to kind of look at it from different aspects. And, our guests come from diverse backgrounds. They span industries. It includes business, entertainment, hospitality, public service, sports, literary, visual arts. They have unique perspectives, and they talk about how they seize opportunities and navigate the challenges and making kind of meaningful impacts in their respective fields. So what I tried to do here on the key takeaways is to put a little bit of an organization to it. And I'm kind of looking at it from kind of 4 themes of the key takeaways. Number 1, really seizing opportunities. I wanted to highlight instances where opportunities kind of came up in their life, and the guest had to proactively kind of either take the opportunity and create something for themselves or potentially let it pass by. And the one that I just did recently, and it really kind of stuck with me, is Becky Hurt. Becky is a vice president of administration at a YKTA, a automotive partner, pass-through company for the automotive industry for Toyota and Mazda. But she has a tremendous Toyota background, and in her career, starting out as basically an AR analyst in headquarters and manufacturing in Kentucky for Toyota, ends up going to different plants and really took that experience and eventually ends up in Plano, Texas. But in her story, here's a gal that is super successful, and she just got to a point. She finally realized, what, I want to try something entrepreneurially, and so she shares that in her episode. And then as she kind of goes through that process, she gets back into the automotive field, and I really felt, and I've known her for quite a while, that she had kind of found her rhythm and really what's working and what's not, and what her boundaries are. And probably the most interesting part about Becky's episode was she talked about, this is supposed to be talking about how to take and seize opportunities. Sometimes you've got to say no. And she talks about some of the times she said yes, and over a career sometimes. Yes can lead to regret. I'm sure no can too, but it definitely gives a good insight of what people, the contemplative period that all of us have in our careers, and kind of how to make the best decisions. And it gives you some insight of maybe something you could use for yourself if you're coming across a situation like that. Probably next up for me would be Rich Pierce. Rich and his family, good friends of the family. Rich grew up in the Midwest. He's a pro surfing judge in pro surfing, but he's also an Olympic judge. He was a historic event with having surfing in the Olympics, and he was the first judge team for that Olympics in Tokyo in 2020-21. And he's getting ready. And so he was sharing with us not only his journey coming from the Midwest where there's no ocean. He gets out to the coast, West Coast, and he ends up in Hawaii. And he talks about him starting to get really involved and his love for marine biology, taking him and getting closer to nature, and then the surf culture. And, in that episode, this is a person that spent over a decade doing all of the judging that he could for free to get experience, to get exposure, to network, while he's still trying to support his family and him and his wife living on the Big Isle. And as he was starting to go through, he started to getting success, worked his way through, and he kind of shares that. He also talked a lot about the surf culture and what's happening now with the Olympics being having the surfing as an event. It's starting to bring surfing into the mainstream for a sport that it's really kind of been something that, was for a lot of insiders and people that lived on the coast, and they definitely a little bit of a closed community. And so he talks about kind of the challenges that the surf community is having. And I would really recommend that. I think it gives you a different slice of life if you are a 9-to-5 corporate person and you really kind of had a fascination with recreation and sports. Rich's episode, I thought, would be very helpful. The second category I look at is navigating challenges. And, what we realize in navigating challenges is not everybody's path is linear, and everybody defines success differently. Some of these is really trying to overcome obstacles that are just so tremendous that, a lot of people, one of the reasons, like I said, I did this podcast is I wanted people to not make excuses. Like, you are where you're at. And you got to make the best of what you have. And if you want to get somewhere, you try to sit back and reflect where you want to be and start working your way towards that. But for a lot of us, that's just us, and you're not overcoming adversity. But in that category on this show, we had some really powerful testimonies. I'd probably start with Robbie Gustin, a Dallas musician, guitar player. He had and shared a really tough childhood. I mean, brutal. Talking about having his arms broken, sleeping in a box. It led to a very tough childhood, substance abuse, and his recovery. And to meet Robbie today, if you've seen him in his whole element, very successful guy, very talented musician, and I got to do something that I always wanted to do. I got to act like a radio rock DJ, and he let me debut one of his songs that he was getting ready to release on one of his albums. So, if you get an opportunity to watch that episode, I think I liked it because I got to do something a little bit different there, and I really enjoyed that. Next up, I would say Lena Lume. Lena, her story in overcoming adversity is she came to the U.S. From a different country. She basically was homeless. She was pregnant, and she had nowhere to go. She landed at LAX, and just by her faith and just unbelievable, someone looking out over her, she ends up at a women's youth shelter in Los Alamitos, and she went from that women's youth shelter, raising her beautiful family, to being the CEO of one of the most successful Southern California nonprofits, really focusing on providing a safe place for Southern California youth. Probably last in that category is Todd Neal. Todd Neal was somebody that I had met up at USC, and in the process, I do a lot of work trying to help mentor veterans that are trying to transition and going to USC for the MBA program set up specifically for veterans. And Todd is a very sharp man that was able to do some tremendous things. But his backstory, his origin story of like overcoming adversity is this guy grew up in a place where he ends up in a youth home for his childhood. And then he ends up transitioning from that to high school to college, trying to find his way, ends up in the Navy as an EOD or explosive ordnance demolition expert, and becomes a war hero. He talks about over 550 missions that he was on, 3 Purple Hearts, very decorated. And, he talks after he got out of the military of what it was like for a veteran trying to transition to civilian life. And his testimony, we get a lot of feedback, again, like I said, through our website and emails, but we got a tremendous amount of people from corporate America wanting to figure out how to help people, especially veterans that are trying to transition to civilian life, where the issue is these people have done unbelievable things, and it's hard to write the resume, especially today where resumes, a lot of screening is done through AI, and they look for keywords and phrases, and it's hard to explain the experience that the veterans can bring to the table, and especially around leadership and moving organizations and being dedicated to missions that they're willing to put their life on the line. So really powerful. The next category I would say is probably is meaningful impact. And these are guests that had done great things in their professional careers, but they not only didn't stop there, they kept on moving through philanthropic efforts. They've shown just continued commitment to making a positive difference in the world. Some of these episodes and guests come to mind had just made a tremendous impact in their industry or their community. And, first and foremost, I just have to say is one of my dear friends, Kenny Brandyberry. Kenny was in the first 10 episodes, and he, his focus was he was a famous owner of bars and nightclubs in Southern California. And, one of his nightclubs was across the street from a Los Alamitos racetrack called the Starting Gate. And that place had a capacity of about 400 or 500 people. And it was one of the largest liquor distribution volume locations in Southern California for almost 15 years. And it was all because this person, Kenny, is somebody that believes in being in the business 18 hours a day. He also believes in personal selling and getting out there and greeting people at the door and making them feel important. And going through his story, you start to see the type of person he is. But after all this success and all these things that he had created from scratch, he started giving back to his community. And he got dedicated with a gal named Mildred Jones, a Navy commander that had retired. She had a house, 67 years old, basically sold her house and bought a beat-down house in an area where you can do nonprofit work, and she put together a shelter called Casa U Shelter. And she ended up commissioning Kenny. This had been going on for a while. She got in touch with Kenny, and Kenny started being really the ambassador hero for the Casa U Shelter. He's raised over probably $1 to $2 million for the organization himself personally, and was known within the community as the guy that has a miniature golf course in his backyard and a full bar area. Of course, you would expect that from a bar owner, and it was an event in Southern California that you wanted to get invited to. And Kenny and I serve on the U Shelter board, and it was just very inspirational. His story of giving back. And I think it's a good reminder of, like, when you are successful, that it goes both ways. You really got to kind of play it and pay it forward. And it was a great example. Probably next up is, went to Hawaii. We did 3 episodes in Pearl Harbor and in the Hawaiian Islands, and was over there. One of the young guys that I met over there, Tony Chance, one of the episodes, Tony is a Navy veteran. I know you're seeing a trend there, but great guy. And Tony, he was in the Seabees, the construction battalion for the Navy. And, he got out of the Navy 26 years, I believe, if I remember right. And what he ended up doing is he got out and he was in Pearl Harbor, and he started realizing, he was working on higher education. He started realizing, Pearl Harbor is a super fun site. It's one of the most contaminated areas with all the years of military and industry happening in the Pearl Harbor area. And so if you ever go to Hawaii, you think of Pearl Harbor, just the USS Arizona, but really Pearl Harbor basically is probably over 20 to 30 miles of coastline that's centering right around Honolulu. And most of it is back channels and water that's contaminated. And he basically started a nonprofit and really to really rework and restore the back portions of Pearl Harbor. And his story was really compelling, great guy. And it was something that, it's an example that the show tries to do to provide people that see a problem and they try to figure out, how can I go after it? And when he did, what was really powerful is the community got behind him. And this is a white guy that got out of the military. And if you've lived in Hawaii, I was stationed there for 2 years. Sometimes it's hard to be accepted by the locals. And when the locals see somebody putting it in motion, like Tony did, he really was able to get just a really significant support. And again, just a great lesson. Lastly, it was an interview that I'd done just not too long ago. One of my friends and somebody I've known for a while, Michael Gates, he's the city attorney in Surf City, USA, or Huntington Beach, California. Michael definitely is somebody that took a really serious look at before he ran for city attorney. He was a corporate lawyer, and he'd done some municipal work at a private law firm, and then ended up running for office. And, the community, especially in Huntington Beach, really is at a pretty important inflection point over the last probably 10 years. A community that is always known as kind of the ground zero for surfing here in Southern California. I grew up just right by there, going to the beach as a kid. But when I grew up there, there was very little development, especially down by the beach. It was one street, Beach Boulevard, that went all the way to the beach and hit PCH, and there was a pier a little bit further north of that, and that's about all there was. And from that time to today, built up pretty significantly. So it's been a city trying to find itself and trying to determine, do we need to slow down some of this development? So Michael came in, he started fighting for local control. He started fighting for, what we should be focused on as far as housing and whether they should be putting more housing in to make it more congested. And you're really kind of keying off the will of the people and what they want. And so I think if you want to ever get involved with your community and you're really trying to find ways to do something, I think Michael's story is really, really helpful and really compelling. Last category I have is mentorship moments. I would say in the podcast, I've tried to display not only in just words, but in examples of the value of mentorship, both in professional growth and personal growth, really to kind of see some of the episodes that some of the people were really able to provide. And again, nothing is more powerful than to provide the testimony and the voice of the guest. So these guests really kind of laid it on the line. And, I'd have to start with who started the whole podcast with me, which first guest number one, Barry Richards. Barry's a reverend. He's also somebody that's in corporate world. And so he's always kind of straddled the two. I knew him in the corporate world. Him and I spent a tremendous amount of time actually in Ireland. And we were together during 9/11, but really he's a pastor in a South Central LA church and in a pretty disadvantaged area with unbelievably great people in that church. My wife and I have been up there a few times and we try to help out their church, but Barry's story is compelling. But I think what you'll see, and I talked about a little earlier, is we started Sidebar where we bring Barry back and we try to share. I talk about mentors for me personally, and I try to say the different types of categories to have a mentor. Some of it's spiritual, which would be Barry. But, for me, what I focus on a lot on this podcast is executive coaching. Ann Collier, Les Whitney, examples of executive coaches. But you can have a coach for your physical fitness. You can have coach for a lot of different things or different mentor help that you would need. And again, so I thought Barry was a really good example. And so you'll get to hear some of our sidebar discussions. Really like sharing time with him. Next up is Mark Newsom, who leads Veterans Affairs business for IBM. Mark and I have been working together for the last 2 or 3 years. And the thing that I noticed early on with Mark is his leadership style is one that really draws people in. A lot of people could say, hey, how do you judge whether a leadership style works or not? There's a lot of different ways of doing it. But I think with Mark, what I've been able to do is, being a quant finance guy, is you look at his business portfolio. He has been able to grow his VA business is from the industry side to really some of the largest and highest pacing growth that we have in the federal market within IBM. And the people that are on his team, they just feel like they're part of something very special. And so I kind of put him in the category of thoughtful leadership. And his mantra is to be there for the team. I also like his backstory. I think you would find something very interesting with Mark's backstory from Mississippi. And the trials and tribulations of growing up in the backcountry and really what hard work and labor, physical labor is, and having a father that really was known in the community as somebody that was really well respected and a great father to his kids. And so Mark goes back after being a highly acclaimed Washington, D.C. insider, and he heads back, and everybody says that that's Mr. Newsom's son. So it's not even Mark. He's kind of talked about in the context of his father. And his story, very interesting, very compelling, and also very inspirational. Last up, I think, would be Les Whitney. Les is an executive coach. His context for what he brought to Ameritocracy was very powerful. Les had been diagnosed in 2019. We're recording the episodes in 2024. So 5 years ago, he basically got diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, the 1% chance of survival over the next 3 or 4 years. And so here we are 5 years later. And at the time of the episode, not only is he talking about his book, Cancer Gift, and basically he puts himself out there as using this as a way to have deeper discussions and better, deeper contacts with you have going for you in your life today, not so much what you always want to, but enjoying the moment and taking the most of the moment and helping the people around you. But, at the time of the episode, he had found out that chemo, which he is on every 3 weeks and has been on for years doing to fight the cancer off, is no longer working. And you think, God, that's pretty bad. But when you read his book and you talk to him and you listen to the interview, this guy has been dealing with the X doesn't work anymore issue his whole career. And so he's just applying what he uses and how he goes about it. And I think, very powerful to be able to utilize that process with anything that you're going on in your life. And it's not a downer. It's not just about cancer. It's about really just how to have a positive attitude on things and how to take inventory and to overcome. Probably the one last thing that I would say is, we got a tremendous amount of feedback on that episode specifically because he talked about dealing with terminal illness in the workforce and how to deal with people that you work with that might have terminal illness. How do you deal very constructively with your colleagues and people at work, or even yourself, of having somebody that's passed away, and and how to feel that compassion and empathy and how to deal with that. Unbelievable, his guidance and opening up, and it's more first person, so it's he challenges us on how to not make the decision for the person going through the turmoil, is to engage that person and to pull them out and to give them an opportunity to either rebuke you and not want to talk about it, or to pull you in and start a dialogue. But don't stop before you ask them and make that decision for them. Let them make the decision. So that's very powerful. So as I kind of look through this and try to do this retrospective, probably the last part of the retrospective I looked at is I had to have a discussion with my producer, Sarah. Sarah's involved with every portion of the show. So when it comes to being able to go through and see episodes that are coming up, how we're curating the show, are we being able to kind of, quote, construct that library of reference that's balanced? Are we are we looking at the way that the show is kind of coming across and a very critical eye on every aspect? I asked her, hey, what were some of your favorite moments of the 52 episodes? And it was interesting. It was like talking to a mom that wouldn't pick her favorite child. But, there was a couple themes that she talked about that I thought would be worth sharing. And I guess I'll use probably 2 or 3 guests that I thought were interesting examples from her perspective. And, number one was probably JoJo Jennings. JoJo was a leader in the hospitality industry in Washington, D.C. And he's not only has he worked in some of the most prestigious hotels and in a lot of different areas, but he has actually helped launch a lot of very famous restaurants in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's known. He's got an unbelievable personality, personal brand, and he brought it. He came to the interview with a perspective and very enjoyable and just the greatest guy. So that was a great episode. She also liked the discussion with Rich Pierce for the surfing, and probably with that one, I think her feedback to me on that was that Rich had flown in to Hawaii with his wife, and we're friends. We've been family friends with them for quite a while. So it was a very relaxed interview. It was something where we had an opportunity. We were in a hotel in Waikiki, and we had the opportunity to do our interview, and then we went out and just had a great dinner. And it was, I think, that comfort with each other and the capability of what really Rich had to talk about, I think, was something that she really enjoyed. Next up, I think she talked about, we had interviewed Coast Guard Admiral Mark Fedor. So that time the show went on the road to Key West, and we went with Mark. Mark was the leader of the JIAT South, which is the Joint Interagency Task Force South. Basically, within the military, is kind of within the COCOM area as a coordination point between the intelligence community, the defense community, law enforcement, and foreign countries through Latin America. And so Mark has a really important job, almost an ambassador job, dealing with all the different stakeholders. And because there's a lot of information and different levels of partnership with the countries, you can't be everything to everybody. You can't disclose things because maybe there's classification issues, but you need to disclose enough to keep the partnership, and you need to be a straight shooter. So Mark talks about how to thread the needle. And I thought that I would agree with Sarah. That was an episode that, anybody that's got put into a position where you got a bunch of different stakeholders that are going different ways, but you're all having a noble cause. I think Mark did a great job. Probably the other thing I personally liked about that episode too was the focus on the transnational organized crime. Being able to hear, being previously at DHS and knowing and dealing with that as an issue. Being the chief financial officer, I'm definitely not on the front line, but I think actually hearing about it when you're at headquarters and actually seeing it out there in Key West where there's a lot of activity going on, I think Mark really illuminates that, brings it to life. I think you would enjoy that episode too. And then probably last would be Lynn Cox. I think with Lynn, what was compelling was that her stories of basically setting records and how to go about, she visualizes stuff in her mind and kind of plays it through. And I think that her examples and stories, swimming back and forth back to Catalina, being able to swim Antarctica, being able to these world record areas. She swam from the U.S. to Russia up in the Aleutian Island chain. It was a great stories, and just really was able to kind of demonstrate the type of activities that Lynn had been involved with. I think that, probably in summary, I think when I asked Sarah, what was the theme, is she's like, I think it's just good conversations. She just really appreciated that. And so I don't think I picked one of the kids, but I definitely think that was something that, I thought it was interesting. It's always interesting to hear what the producer thinks after all these different shows. Looking ahead, we just kind of look at maybe the podcast, the milestones for the last year, before we start just totally looking forward. And I think it's just been an exciting ride. We've done episodes from NATO. We were in NATO in Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden, got 3 interviews over there, giving you a perspective. NATO's been in the news a lot, and it's kind of just interesting to hear some of the key people that kind of get involved to at least from a public service perspective, to give a voice of either industry and to give a subject matter expertise on some key things that NATO was dealing with. And then, as you've heard, we've been across America from Hawaii to Florida. We've had a lot of great interviews. Not only do we do our video or our podcast recordings in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., but we take the show on the road, and it's been really, really fun to do that and to see different places and to get out there. Probably the other milestones that I think were interesting is we actually ended up on the international charts in Europe. So on Apple charts, we were able to hit some of the top of the charts there. We had done interviews specifically around Ed Ma, and Ed had shared his story. He was a corporate guy. He had done. He was in the Peace Corps as a college student. He got out and did the Peace Corps in Ukraine. Came back home, went back, started more businesses over in Ukraine, and then came back to the U.S., got an MBA, went back over there, and he was really involved with the country. And so when it went to war, he had a lot of people that he really cared about over there and just really wanted to try and help. So he started a nonprofit that basically raised money and organized medical transportation, ambulances, medical equipment back and forth to Ukraine to kind of help take care of the people that were getting, significant issues and damage, and really, destructive activity that was going on and is still going on in Ukraine. And so, but when we did that interview, I didn't realize Ed had such an international following. And so as soon as we did that, we started getting letters from ambassadors from different countries. We ended up putting out a press release because we were getting a lot of keen. And then we also promoted the fact that we'd actually hit the top of the Apple charts over there, which is a big milestone for the show. I want to talk a little bit for the future, like promotion. I would just invite everybody, if you can, to check out our website at troyedgar.com. You'll find a bunch of our literary resources that we reference in the episodes of Ameritocracy, and you'll find out more detail about our guests if you're interested in being able to learn more about them and some of the stuff that they talk about. 5 pictures, extra pictures of people's Purple Hearts, some of the war heroes that we've had on here that talk about some of the pictures. We had, opportunity to have a Holocaust survivor and Suzanne Copeland and Suzanne's story living through the Holocaust and basically shared some of the pictures of some of the stuff that she got after coming to America. So it was very powerful. For this year, we had an opportunity the previous year to do live shows, and we're going to really start to explore that a little bit in 2024 more. Sort of like being in my dream, right? Being in a rock band. You get an opportunity, you create stuff, and you put it out there, and you hope that you create a following. And through that following, what we hope to be able to do is to bring, people closer to the show. And to do that, sometimes you go out and you have the shows either record live shows with a guest on stage or to talk about the show and to be able to kind of go through. I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of our listeners, our guests, our dedicated team behind the scenes. We really appreciate you being a part of this incredible journey and really look forward to the next 52 episodes. So, if you would just continue to join the conversation by subscribing to our show, reviewing it. Again, just to be really clear, if you go to YouTube, you can put comments in there and rate our show. If you go out to Spotify or Apple or any of those, you can go and actually give us a rating. I'd ask to please consider a 5-star rating and maybe a comment or two. Be helpful. And then again, just being able to kind of get an idea. Lastly, what I want to do is as I kind of wrap up the show here, I'm going to basically play out to a rolling credit of all of the guests that were basically profiled, the 52 guests that we've had over the last year. Again, I just want to thank all of them for being on the show. I want to thank you for joining us on this journey. And we're looking forward to the next 52. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.